Welcome to the Business of Travel, the official podcast of the Global Business Travel Association. I'm Suzanne Neufung, CEO for GBTA, and today we're here to talk about what we like to call GBTA convention season because it's the run-up to our annual convention in Atlanta on July 22nd through the 24th. Our annual convention is an event that brings together thousands of business travel professionals from around the world. So what's in store for business travel buyers and suppliers making their way to the GBTA convention this year? What's new, noteworthy, and needed to know by attendees? And how can everyone make the most of their convention experience this year? So I'm here today with two convention and GBTA veterans from our GBTA Board of Directors. On the travel buyer side, GBTA Board Vice President Rosemary Maloney. Rosemary is the Senior Manager of Travel and Expense for Alteryx. And on the supplier side, I have our president of the GBTA Allied Leadership Council, Tammy Ruth. Tammy's the Senior Vice President of Global Sales for Marriott International. Thank you both for joining us today on our podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Tammy and Rosemary, we know that GBTA is more than just its convention. Our association offers a lot year-round to our global community of thousands of industry professionals. But our convention is the one place where everyone can come together in person to connect and learn each year. Do you remember attending your first GBTA convention? And what are some of your best memories from that time? Rosemary, let's start with you.
So my first GBTA convention was my entire entree into this whole world. It was Denver in 2011. And it was so overwhelming. I was coming as a solo travel buyer. I really didn't know that many people in the industry yet. And I made the mistake of not going to the first timers event, which I always recommend people do since I didn't. But it was one of those things where, it's almost trial by fire, especially as a buyer. No matter what, even if you have somebody to kind of help you usher you through, it's an overwhelming expo floor. And it was also the first year that we went from NBTA to GBTA, and everyone was making this huge deal of it. And if it's your first year, you're like, congratulations, you realize that business travel goes outside the United States. Well done. So it was one of those things that was very funny for me, especially looking back now with how involved I've gotten. Because it was just one of those things where I went to, kind of start my career in travel and really learn more about, what I needed to do and really meet with a lot of those vendors that I had only ever spoken to on the phone.
That's such a good entry into our industry, Rosemary. I can't think of a better way to do that. Tammy, what's your story?
Yeah, I was trying to think back what year this would have been. I can't even remember. It's been a long time ago, but I do remember distinctly how excited and how proud I was that my company allowed me to attend this very large convention where our best customers were. I had grown up in the industry in the group segment space and had more recently moved over to where I was responsible for group and business travel. So I was so proud. I was, like Rosemary said, I was so scared. I was overwhelmed, but I had the advantage of traveling with a lot of my peers and my company and hoteliers. So that made it a lot easier that I had other people around who had been and could explain it to me. But I do remember that it exceeded my expectations. I couldn't believe, I felt so much smarter after I left because I got information directly from industry leaders and customers, and I got to see other people in my company I'd never met before, and I got to meet so many customers that were new and existing. But I can remember, like Rosemary said, it being very overwhelming, but such a great experience in the end.
I hear the theme of someone mentoring you to show you the ropes, let you understand what it was that you're going to be inundated with, and helping you through, that expo floor and other things that are just massive. And I have to say that I have a similar experience. I've been in the industry a long time as well, and my first convention, though, was my first week on the job in a corporate travel job in 2005. I had moved from Travelocity to the corporate side of the Sabre families back in the day of Travelocity Business and Get There. And I remember the VP of product engineering took me under his wing. I was in a product role, and he basically walked the expo floor with me and pointed out what X company did and who they were and what their role was in the industry. And it was my first inkling that corporate travel is not the same as leisure travel. And it was just super, super interesting to know that this kind of forum existed. So just like what we described, every year we're super excited to welcome other first-time attendees. I have a few stats for you today now at time of recording in early June. We have about 20% who have never attended before. And for another 14%, it's only their second time. So they know the ropes, but they're still pretty new to our convention and maybe to our industry. And 26% of buyers so far have registered as first timers. So there are a lot of people that are going to be there for the first time. So what kind of advice would both of you give these to first timers at this year's event? Tammy, let me start with you.
Okay, so I'll do it from the supplier perspective. So my company does a full day of education for our hotel representatives prior to when convention starts. And part of that is a first timer session. And then we assign a buddy, if you will, with a more seasoned person for the rest of the week to help them navigate the convention. So I would strongly encourage all suppliers to make sure that they're doing some form of a first timers work to complement what GBTA is doing. And then I would also say to suppliers that it's all about advanced preparation. You got to get your appointment scheduled. You got to get signed up for the right breakouts. And then fully immerse yourself into this experience. Attend every single session you could attend. You got to maximize that expo trade show. You got to work it. You can't just sit back and expect everyone to come to you. You've got to introduce yourself to everybody you sit by at a general session, a breakout in the hallway. You've got to really work this. And that one thing, Suzanne and Rosemary, that I've really realized probably more in the last couple of years, frankly, is that GBTA has this really strong community, and the people that have been a part of it for a long time love nothing more than helping people understand the community and how to maximize it. So I would suggest that if you're a first timer, also ask people for help, ask them for guidance during, right? Because I think people love to help because they're so proud of being a part of it. So that's what I would do if I was on the supplier side, is just don't attend and then be, taking phone calls in your hotel or doing appointments, with customers outside the show. Fully immerse yourself into this experience.
I can relate to all of that, Tammy. I've been there. And I think that's great advice. Those are great tips. Rosemary, from a buyer perspective, do you have a different perspective?
It's slightly different just because, it's the different side of the table, but Tammy is absolutely right. You need to immerse yourself in the whole experience. Go to the education sessions, take time on the expo floor, schedule appointments with new vendors, existing vendors while you're on the floor, but also make sure you're giving yourself enough time to get from one end to the other, or strategically look at the expo map beforehand and set up your appointments based on what's going to be in each general region. Again, it's a massive floor. So if you're thinking you can get from one side to the other with a buyer badge in 10 minutes, that's not a possibility. I will say a couple of years ago, I switched my badge with one of my hotelier friends. She was from an independent hotel company, and she said, I never felt as much love as I did as a buyer at GBTA. But I was able to make my appointment because if I hadn't done that, I would have been late, because a lot of times we do get stopped. And that, for buyers, it's perfectly okay to be like, to say to someone, I will come back and talk to you later. I'm on my way to an appointment. But be careful of not overscheduling yourself. I know I just said, make sure you schedule, but don't overschedule, because you can find yourself getting to the end of your first day and just feeling completely exhausted and having another day and a half of expo and education to get there that you're just like done. So you want to make sure that you really be mindful of that. Also make sure you're taking your coffee breaks, water breaks, all of that good stuff while you're there.
I think those are really, really great points. And I think one of the places between education and expo, the way we planned it this year, is that you can recharge during right before expo in our main stage. So there's a place for you to learn collectively with another, 5,000-6,000 people, with speakers and things that are happening in that main stage. But that's a place to actually sit because there's not a lot of sitting at expo as well, and so that will actually, I think, give you a place. And then that orientation on that very first day, which is Monday this year, is really important for first timers, and you'll meet some people that you can find in the crowds throughout the week that might be reassuring to you, especially if you're not coming with a big group or other people from your team, and just having one or two people that you've met and sat at a table with before everything starts. I think it's sometimes a really, really good strategy as well. And so now, as we look ahead to what is happening for that week of convention, I certainly want to take a moment to those of you listening who've attended in years past and provided feedback via our post-event surveys. We do read every single comment, every single rating, and we listen. And we have made some of the changes in the past year, including this year, based on that attendee feedback. So what some of those are, for example, moving to a 3-day format last year, and we're continuing that this year. It proved to be very popular, keeping it to 3 days. And this year, with a first ever Monday start, we've always started on the weekends. Post-pandemic, I think there's such a much bigger focus now on wellness, even in our industry, that tends to give up a lot of weekends for things at events. So yes, it's a more compact week and agenda, but it also maximizes attendee ROI. And we've heard from both buyers and suppliers that they really appreciate that. We also have an expanded first timer program, and a new lounge area that's all about wellness. And we also have a brand new destination pavilion in Expo for those coming who have a group and transient perspective, like Tammy just talked about, whether you're a supplier or buyer. And we're keeping the sustainability pavilion conveniently on the expo floor, which is one of those things that we heard a couple of years ago, to put it where all of the action was rather than outside. So looking at this year's program and the other things, I wanted to get your ideas for what you're looking forward to this year. Rosemary, let me start with you this time.
I always look forward to each year just spending time with so many people that I've met through the last, 10 years, going to convention, being a part of GBTA, being part of the chapters and ladders. It is, we do joke about it's a little bit like business travel summer camp. We all come together for
Yeah.
a little while in the summer, and, we get to learn, and we get to, we're definitely active with all the walking we do. You got your 20,000 steps a day when you're at convention. But you also get, again, that the community aspect of GBTA is never as on display as much as at convention, where you see people walking up to their suppliers and giving them a warm hug, and you hear people talking about their kids and their travel plans, because we all love our business travel, but we love our personal travel just as much. So that's something I look forward to year after year, is just that reconnection. I also love hearing all the new research. It's where we usually get the BTI for the next year, which helps me in, my job and figuring out what's our forecast looking like. So, we always see what the forecast was for 24 in the 23 report. We get to see what they're seeing as the actuals, and then we get to see the forecast for 25. So it does make me a stronger negotiator, and it helps me kind of build out our program, making it more future proof. And really, that piece of it is something that I is so valuable, that research that we're able to get access to. And then all of the education sessions, you're able to go down different tracks. You're able to, learn about hotel if you need to, ground, air. Everyone loves those 3 letters, NDC. And it's also, there's other great content that's produced by all the different committees of GBTA. So you're able to hear about risk and meetings. So it's one of those things where you get so much education and so much information that I think it also helps with that reconnection.
Mm. I think that's a great point. And for those of you that are overwhelmed by, over 90 education sessions, 10 of which or 12 of which are happening simultaneously throughout the two or 3 days, that all of them are recorded. So if you missed something that you wanted to see, but you were somewhere else, you can always go back into our member hub and listen to those later. So I can appreciate all of those points that you made, Rosemary. Tammy, how about you? What are you looking forward to this year?
Well, ditto to everything Rosemary said. So I'm going to try to think some other things here. First of all, one of the things that I was thinking about is post-COVID, this work from anywhere phenomenon has, I think, made events like convention even more critical. Because you used to be able to go meet your customers in offices, and a lot of times they're not working in offices anymore. They're working from home, and they're bringing full teams, their full teams, right, to conventions because they want to maximize this opportunity to come together. So I think the ROI is even more important in being able to see customers even post-COVID. But I think as a supplier, we've been, I think most suppliers would agree, Expo Trade Show is probably the highlight in the sense of that is where you have scheduled appointments, or that it's a place that customers can find you. Hey, just stop by and they know where you are. So we believe we really get a big ROI out of that. And then everything Rosemary said, I mean, I love the educational sessions because we know what we know. We know what our own companies talk about, but we're there to learn what is the voice of the customer. What is what's on the customer's mind? Like Rosemary said, what's the research show so that we can look around the corner and be sure that we're prepared to go back to our company and figure out what we're going to be doing in this space. But I think, again, I don't want to be redundant because I agree with everything Rosemary said.
Yeah, and I think talking about Expo, we're doing for the second year. It worked pretty well last year, but we're making some adjustments. So the welcome reception is on the Expo floor again. And of course, we're in the southern part of the US where it's very hot in July and humid. So keeping it indoors and air conditioned will I think be comfortable for everybody. And we're thinking about really even better ways to have networking, food, and fun all together. So attendees will find 3 Atlanta neighborhoods this year, downtown, midtown, and Buckhead, as a way to orient themselves in that very first expo session, which is again on Monday after the first main stage session. So you dive right into business rather than waiting a day and a half to be able to see what that beautiful expo floor looks like. I think the other thing that we're certainly focused on every year is bringing timely topics and great speakers to the main stage. We have 3 of them this year, and they're all based on a focus area, if you will. So day 1, the focus is on the state of the industry, the economy, and human behavior. And we have Dan Ariely speaking. He's a New York Times bestselling business and economist, psychology professor from Duke University, who runs his own consultancy in the field of behavioral economics. He's a great storyteller. So in my view, marketers and buyers will be able to learn what and how their customers and their stakeholders behave, and why sometimes what they do isn't making sense, but it actually does add up in the way the behavioral economists study them. On day 2, it's really about innovation and transformation. And we have Carla Harris talking about transformation within our own careers and how to manage your own career. And I think that will be very inspirational. And then on day 3, it's all about industry recognition and the future of business travel. And in that case, we have world aviation explorer Bertrand Piccard, who is going to be speaking about his circumnavigation of the globe in a solar-powered airplane. So again, it's thinking about getting out of our day jobs and thinking about what the future holds for us, and getting a little bit of inspiration along the side. So Tammy and Rosemary, in no particular order, how do you think these topics will resonate with the audience or with you as you think about business travel in the year 2024?
Yeah, I think that, well, first of all, I love the topics. I think GBTA is always known for really being very innovative and thoughtful about the content that you put in those general sessions and kind of pushing us to think differently. And what you've done, Suzanne, you and your team this year, it sounds like you're doing exactly that same thing we all have come to love and respect. As Rosemary said, I mean, I really enjoy anything that has to do with helping us understand state of the business. And again, I always use this phrase, but kind of looking around the corner, helping us understand what should we be anticipating for the future. I think all of us are hungry for understanding this innovation space. I guess AI would be one piece of that, where we're all trying to figure out what in the heck does that mean in our, worlds. Sustainability. You've done a beautiful job of having that on stage for a couple of years, and I think we will have to keep talking about it. And what does that mean? Making it meaningful for everybody in the audience. I think the sustainability pavilion helps pull that through so people can get, more hands-on with that. And when you talk about innovation, I'm just going to put a plug in there. For the hotel industry and our customers and that are, in that space, we've got to figure out a way to modernize the way we manage everything with accommodations. That BT RFP process and the way reservations are made, that's a whole innovation discussion within itself that I'd love to see us talk more about. So anyway, I think you're completely on point, really looking forward to it. I'll just do another plug. One of the things that we do in our company is we make sure that we assign somebody to every single session. And we make sure that if you're attending a session, you got to take notes and you got to report back to the rest of us what you heard. And that includes the general sessions so that we can think about the so what after it. So Rosemary, over to you.
Yeah, on the general sessions, there's so much good stuff there, especially with these topics. I mean, I'm obviously very passionate about the future of business travel. As a matter of fact, my 9-year-old niece told her teacher last week that she wants to be a travel executive when she grows up. And her teacher asked her, "What is that?" And she goes, "I don't know, but my aunt does a lot of really cool stuff." And I was like, "Hey, we're at least hitting that, Gen Alpha. We may have missed on Z, but we'll get Alpha in." But
great.
I think that's something that is great to hear about. I also love the behavioral economists coming in, because there's so many things that we have to do as buyers that are totally, we all know nudge theory, and we've all had to play all these different games to get people to follow the policy, because we have to use both the carrot and the stick. So I love hearing from people who know the psychology behind it. That I think I think it's going to be really fascinating to hear. And finally, I love when we get to recognizing and giving recognition to people in our industry. It is one of always my favorite parts of convention. There's rarely a dry eye in the room. So it's always like great to recognize people that aren't always seen and aren't always, the ones that everyone talks about. So it's one of those things where it's for me, that's one of the things that I love is those inspirational pieces when we get to hear about why these people are being awarded as Allied Member of the Year, Direct Member of the Year, and with the President's Award. It's just really good to see and good to hear.
That's such an important part, the recognition, right, of the unsung heroes, because we have so many within our industry who've helped us get where we are today, and we need to pass the torch. So I think that's all great. And Tammy, I know that you mentioned some really important education session topics that you're looking forward to as well. Every year we have these 80 to 90 education sessions that we often get such good learnings out of them. And the great thing is that they're member led, so members through a very grueling peer review process get selected to present these. It's something that they earn their way into. It's not GBTA staff choosing who they are. It's actually our member-led peer review council that chooses who gets to be in these 80 to 90 education sessions. So big topic areas, of course, every year we find out, where the rooms are filled to capacity, which topics are the most popular. But again, you can always get the recording afterwards if you weren't able to get in or you had a conflicting ed session at the same time. Along with sustainability and modernization of hotel procurement practices, Tammy, let me start with you. Are there other topics that you're looking forward to in this year's education lineup?
Yeah, I think for me, I want to push myself because I think it's really easy to go to sessions where you're already comfortable with the topic and maybe you want to your customers in the room, you want to hear from them. But I like to push myself to go places where I don't have a comfort around it. I think if there's any of these sessions or particularly breakout sessions are around I need to go. I think I'm trying to learn that space. I'm trying to understand it. So that would be a place that I would go. I think that anything to do also, there's times that I like to go to sessions that don't pertain to hotels. Um, One of my dear friends and coworkers moved over to United Airlines, and just in talking to her, I've learned so much about what maybe the hotel industry could be doing that's different now that she has the lens of hotels and air. So I like to push myself to go to sessions that would traditionally
Hmm.
not be something that I would attend because I just want to learn something new. I don't need to, I'm not there to reinforce, right, what we're already doing. So I guess that would just be a couple things. I always love DEI sessions. So that I go there to make sure that, we stay on top of that and that type of thing. But I'm going to go through all those sessions, Suzanne, and do my homework. And I think that would be the other thing that I would suggest to people is please don't go to convention without having planned out your days
Mhm.
because then it will quickly overwhelm you. So I'm going to have to look through those and push myself to attend ones that aren't my core competency, something I'm not necessarily comfortable with that. So I hope that answered your question.
Totally did. I think that's such a great perspective. Cross-category pollination,
Yeah.
even if you work within one, is super critical. And keeping up with the human side of our industry is so important as well. Rosemary, anything different from a buyer perspective? What kind of things are you curious about as you go into this year's convention?
Well, Tammy mentioned earlier, we have a lot of people that are work from anywhere. So I actually bring my whole team to convention. So it's kind of great for us because we, similarly, with not as many people as Tammy's organization, we split up a lot of the different tracks so that way people can learn more about sustainability. We have somebody focusing more on procurement. We have somebody focusing more on hotels, somebody on payments. Um, and what's really good is we kind of all split out and come back together with, our learnings. But, one of the things that I always feel is, the basics of travel management, the fundamentals of travel, any of those kind of basic 101 classes, I think are always really good to go back and review on because sometimes we get into our own kind of hamster wheel where we're not thinking outside of what we've always done. And I think when we go to these newer fundamentals classes or these new one-on-ones, there's new techniques and new innovation of, through ideas and different tools that people are using that I think are really good for us to learn about.
Hmm.
Additionally, I love everything on tech. I am interested to see, especially with the news of the last few weeks, how the NDC conversation is going to shift. And as Tammy keeps talking about how hotels need to, modernize their retailing, just give us like a year before you do it to us buyers. I don't think our hearts could take, another piece of this whole new paradigm
Mhm.
shifting content distribution that you're going to look to. But it all needs to be modernized anyway. But I think it's those are really interesting to find to go to. And then on a personal level, I'm interested. I'm going to give another shout out to Ladders. I'm interested to see who won this year because having just seen the final four, all four final four presentations were really good. That I can't figure out who the winner is going to be. So I'm kind of excited to see who is the winner of season 10 for that.
And just a little context for those listeners who aren't aware of GBTA Ladders, it's a young professional mentoring group project program that we run, and it's near the end of its season. And the winning project from among projects that were run by 173 people this year will get to present in an ed session at GBTA's convention. So it is a big culmination for that group who are very supportive of each other. And so it is very appropriate that you mentioned that, Rosemary. And I also wanted to mention, because you mentioned the classes and things, we do have a full weekend, Saturday, Sunday, where we're running 3 academy courses as well for those who can come a bit early and work on their certifications, work on some other things. One is on sustainability, one is on strategic meetings management, and the other one is advanced principles of of managed business travel. So I think all 3 of those are certainly options for those that are looking for learning and can do it during a weekend rather than during their day job. So in-person learning is back as well. So all good points. And I think now that we get to come to our closing, I have one last question for you. And it's if there's one thing you haven't mentioned yet, what is the last piece of advice you would give to attendees before they head out to this year's GBTA convention in Atlanta? Rosemary, let me start with you.
Bring comfortable shoes. It always sounds like a great idea to have nice, fun heels, but that they're going to last like a second by the time you're done walking that floor to your first appointment. No one's going to shame you for wearing cute sneakers. No one's going to shame you for wearing any sneakers. So go right ahead and be comfortable. And really just, go in with, there to remember everyone's there to help push the industry forward. So be there and be cooperative with everyone.
Great advice. Tammy, how about you? Last piece of advice.
Rosemary, God bless you. That is exactly what I would have said. I think about last year, and I was walking out of the Last Day Expo, and I saw a young lady literally sitting on a couch and crying because her feet hurt her so bad.
Oh.
So for any of you ladies out there that have a boss that tell you you've got to wear high heels, send them to Rosemary and myself, and we will help explain how this works. Comfortable shoes. And then I think this other idea of be really prepared going in, because especially if it's your first or second year, or for anyone, if you go just like, I'll figure it out when I get there, you won't get the full ROI. So really, fully prepared, know your schedule, know which sessions you're attending, and be all in. And for suppliers, I'm going to do one more plea. Please don't pull customers off the show floor for lunches and dinners and things like that. And please don't do events that conflict, because I think we all need this to be an experience that everybody really gets high ROI. So just thank you in advance for that.
All good reminders from both of you, Tammy and Rosemary. So thank you so much for joining us today to share your convention experiences and advice from all those years of experience yourselves. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. You can find all the details about the event and register at convention.gbta.org. We look forward to seeing as many of you as possible in Atlanta for the GBTA convention this year in July. And if you're listening to this after the event, be sure and tap into the Library of Education sessions that we will have recorded for you that are available on demand as a member or attendee benefit. You've been listening to The Business of Travel, the official podcast of the Global Business Travel Association. For more information about GBTA and our work, please visit gbta.org and be ready to rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, thanks for listening.